Hi, and welcome to Run Tall. I'm Tim. Thanks for being here. I always appreciate the time that you and I get to spend together, so thanks for tuning in. And I hope wherever you are that you're happy, healthy, and staying safe. On today's video, I'm going to give you my first impressions of what some have already deemed the shoe of the year. And of course, I'm talking about the Asics Novablast 3. If you're new to the channel, welcome to the Run Tall family. I'm really glad you're here and you found us on YouTube. Now, I post running shoe reviews, shoe battles, and comparisons weekly, but I also like to post a lot of other videos that are related to running as well. So if you enjoy watching running shoe reviews and other videos that are about running, be sure to subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll be notified each time that I upload new content. And quickly, just to get a disclosure out of the way, I did purchase these with my own money, so there's no chance for bias. You know that you're getting 100% my honest opinion. Now, these are a neutral road shoe that I ordered true to size, but I probably could have gone down a half a size. And we'll talk more about that here in just a minute when we start talking about the fit of the upper. Now, they retail for $140 US. For a US men's size 9 on my scales, they came in at 8.2 ounces or 232 grams. Now for a women's size 8, they have a stated weight on their website of 7.8 ounces, which would be the equivalent of 221 grams. So a couple of things that jumped right out at me when I first got them and opened up the box. If you're familiar with the Novablast 2, I think these are a couple of things that you're going to notice right away as well. The first thing was they run long. So much so that I didn't have my reading glasses on at the time when I opened the box, but I handed these to Kim so that she could check the size because I was pretty convinced that they sent me maybe a 9.5 instead of a 9. But no, these are a men's size 9. So I think one of the first things you're going to notice at least is that they do run a little bit long. Now, would I go down a half a size? Maybe. I haven't had a chance to try on an 8.5 to make that determination for sure. But it's definitely a shoe that if you have the opportunity, I would definitely go and try them on to make sure that you do get the size that's going to fit best for you. Because with the Novablast 2, now these fit me perfect. They're perfect across midfoot. They're perfect in the length. So I love the fit of these. And I was a little disappointed that these didn't fit exactly the same way. But it kind of makes up for it a little bit with the second thing that you're going to notice. And that's just how lightweight they are. These are noticeably lighter than the second version of the shoe. And again, 8.2 ounces on my scales, where the Novablast 2 is 9.6 ounces. So almost an ounce and a half lighter. And you definitely notice that when you pick these up, or that would be about 30 grams lighter than the second version of the shoe. So those are a couple of things that just jumped right out at me when I first got them and opened up the box. So the Novablast 3 somehow seems to defy the laws of physics when it's compared to the Novablast 2 because it is definitely a bigger shoe. And they have more midsole foam. Here they got an extra millimeter. So how are they doing it? Well, they changed up the midsole foam. They went from Flight Foam Blast to Flight Foam Blast Plus midsole foam, which is definitely lighter and it has a lot of bounce and energy return to it. So how much of it do they have? Well, in the men's version, they have 31 millimeter stack height in the heel and 23 millimeters up in the forefoot for 8 millimeter offset. Now, the women's is slightly different. In the women's version, they have 30 millimeters in the heel, which means that they have 22 millimeters up in the forefoot because they still maintain that 8 millimeter offset from the heel to the toe. So let's talk about the midsole ride. Now, in the beginning, I said that some have already stated that this is the shoe of the year. And I'm not ready to go there yet because I don't have nearly enough experience in this shoe to make that claim. This is just my first impression run. I went out for what was going to be about a 5-mile run and my legs were tired. And honestly, I just completed a marathon training block with the capstone event for me was running a Detroit marathon. And I did really well, by the way. So I'm not bragging. I'm just really excited at the results that I got. And the reason I bring that up is because this was the first shoe I took out after having completed the Detroit marathon. So I was going to go out for about 5 miles and just kind of test them out and do that first impression run. But I ended up going 10 miles because they're really comfortable. So that's, I think, speaks really well for a shoe when your legs are beat up and they're tired and you still are having a really good time running in them. So lots of bounce, lots of energy return. You probably heard a lot of that. But what you might not have heard is at first, it kind of felt a little bit clunky, to be honest. I'm a midfoot striker, and when I was striking on my midfoot, it didn't feel super natural striking the ground and moving through to my gait cycle. I really had to kind of stay up more on my forefoot for me to be able to get a nice, smooth, comfortable ride. And once I got back there, I was really enjoying the shoes. But as a heel striker, I think I think you could do well there too. I think this is one of those shoes that if you're a heel striker, there's so much cushion back here that that's going to feel really comfortable. It does seem to collapse pretty well, but what happens is that it seems to create more of a cradle or roll or rocker, so that even if you're striking on your heel, you're going to create a nice smooth transition through to your toe off. But if you're a midfoot striker, you kind of, for me anyway, I kind of felt like I was thudding the ground and then had to kind of roll through. But when I got back up on my forefoot, then I felt like it was a much smoother ride for me. So it did take a little bit of time during that 10-mile run in order for me to be able to find a nice sweet spot for me to be able to run in these. So like I said, I can't, and this is just my first impression. Now, it could very well change a little bit over time. Sometimes it does, oftentimes it doesn't. But in this case, I think a little bit more experience, a little bit more fun, and a little bit more time in these shoes will give me a better indication as whether or not I think I'm going to put it up on that pedestal to say it's the shoe of the year. So let's go ahead and we'll flip these over and we'll take a look at the outsole, see how they're protecting all that Flight Foam Blast Plus midsole material that we just talked about. And here you can see they have their AHR rubber, which is Asics high abrasion rubber, in all of the areas that are going to have any kind of ground contact where you're likely to see wear first. And I think they did a really good job here. You know, they used it sparingly, but it's also my understanding that this, even though it's a really thin layer, it's a little bit thicker than the layer of rubber, the AHR rubber that they used in the second version of the shoe. So you're going to get a little extra durability here, maybe get a few more quality miles out of this shoe over last year's version. And then also, as long as we got this flipped over, a couple other things to note here. They got this groove in the back, and then they have this pod up in the forefoot of the shoe, both of which give you somewhat of a trampoline effect. So I think it really works well for people who either are, like I mentioned earlier, heel striking, where you got a lot of cushion in the heel, and you can compress back here, and then because of that groove, and then that recompresses, and gives you a little bit of a pop forward. And then if you're a forefoot striker, you're going to be able to hit right on that pod that is also going to give you a bit of a bounce off your forefoot and help you move you through your gait cycle just a little bit faster, a little bit more comfortably, and give you a little bit more energy return, hopefully save your legs a little bit. But as I mentioned, I did feel like it was a little bit clunky when I was solidly midfoot striking because I wasn't getting the compression from the heel to be able to create that rocker feeling as I roll through from compression all the way through to my toe off. And I wasn't getting the added benefit of that pod off the front where I had that compression and pop off the toe. So when I was midfoot striking, as I mentioned earlier, it did feel just slightly clunky. So I needed to be more where that metatarsal head is to be able to get a nice smooth transition for me as I move through my gait cycle. So let's take a look at the upper. Now here they're using an engineered jacquard mesh material, so that's pretty standard these days. It's soft to the touch, so it feels really comfortable. And that surprised me just a little bit, knowing that 75% of the main part of the upper is made from recycled materials, according to Asics. And I always appreciate it when a company is environmentally friendly like that. So kudos to Asics for that. In terms of fit, again, they do run a little bit long. I was able to get locked in and secure across the midfoot section of the shoe. The one thing that I will note is that when it comes to the lace enclosure system, it's pretty much the same system that they used in version 2. The only difference that I found is that in version 2, when I'm cinching up the laces to really get locked into the shoe all the way back to the heel cup, that the material almost comes so close together that it's touching one another. And here I had just a little bit more space, I guess, in that lace enclosure system, so I didn't have to pull that material quite so close together to get that secure lockdown feeling. Now, in terms of plastic overlays, there really aren't any, except for the two back here in the heel counter of the shoe. Now the tongue is thin, but it's slightly padded, enough to keep it comfortable for you. Now, even though I had my laces cinched down pretty good across the midfoot section of the shoe, I never felt the laces cutting across the top of my foot. So it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It is gusseted on both sides, so you don't have to worry about the tongue migrating around on the top of your foot. It laid nice and flat for me. And they also went to a winged style. So up there at the top, you can see where it's basically notched, or it creates a couple of wings for it to lay nice and flat across your foot. Now there's plenty of padding around the heel collar and the counter of the shoe, especially for a lightweight daily trainer like this, coming in at just 8.2 ounces. So you have a lot of comfort there. And I often call this the pillow style of padding because it rests mainly up towards the top. But in this case, it slowly tapers down to the footbed, which creates a nice heel pocket for your heel to set in. And I didn't have any heel slippage, either side to side or up or down. And the padding back on the heel counter of the shoe, my Achilles was always really comfortable. I didn't have any hot spots or rubbing back there. there at all. So I think they did a really good job with the padding around the heel collar and the counter of the shoe. So let's take a look at the heel counter, a little bit closer look. To do that, I'm going to put it up on my shoulder. I'm going to give it the pinch test just to see how much structure is back here. And as I try to pinch that together, yeah, that's pretty solid. Now that helps just to keep your heel in place and to give you a little added stability when you're out running. And this is not a stability shoe, but as someone who overpronates, I did find these pretty comfortable to run in. I didn't feel like they were unstable at all. Nothing like the first version of the shoe. Even though the FlightFoam Blast Plus material is softer, a little bit more cushioned than what we have in version 2, that didn't impact the stability, especially back in the heel area, because with version 1, if you ran in that shoe, you know that there was just such a big collapse on the inward roll, at least back in the heel area. So it made it difficult to even walk in those shoes. But they corrected that with version 2, and they really kept that philosophy from version 2 to carry over into version 3. So overall, I like the changes that Asics has made to the midsole. That FlightFoam Blast Plus material does have more bounce. It is definitely lighter in weight. You can't hardly argue with it. Almost an ounce and a half lighter than the second version of the shoe, or 30 grams lighter. That's pretty substantial change. So kudos to Asics for that. I'm not a fan of the length of the shoe. I wish that they would have kept it, the sizing wise, the same as the second version. Now I'm going to have to put out a lot more miles in these before I make the determination that this is the shoe of the year, because there's a lot of really great running shoes out there, but I'm going to have a lot of fun running the miles up on these ones. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it for you. As always, run tall, run strong, be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on Run Tall with Tim.